Welcome to the city. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us for the full episode today is our newest member of the San Angelo City Council representing District 5, Lane Carter. Lane, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for letting me come in and do this.
Yeah, you bet. Now, for those who don't know you, what would you like folks to know about yourself and your background?
Well, going door to door, I always told everybody that I am born and raised here. I went to Central High School, went to ASU, got a biology degree, a nursing degree, work as a OR nurse at the Shannon Surgery Center, remodel houses on the side. I am a new father, and this is my hometown, and I love it. I don't have any intentions of moving away.
You ran for city council, obviously. Why did you want to do that?
I was just been told by a lot of people that they were kind of dissatisfied of how the city was being ran, and they needed some new blood in there. A lot of people at work kind of encouraged me. Hey Lane, why don't you run for a city office? Because we were keeping up with everything that was going on with the city council and reading articles in the newspaper. And at first I just didn't give it a second thought, and then finally it just got to me, and I decided to put my name in the hat, and here we are.
Were there any specific issues that kind of drove you to run?
Yeah, I think what made me decide was not anything against Republic Trash Services, but the way that the contract was initiated. That kind of threw me into wanting to run for the city office. Trash, water, streets, drainage, those were some topics that made me want to run for city and see how I could benefit.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about streets and water here in a little bit, but since you brought up the issue of trash and the contract, how would you have preferred that whole process played out?
A little bit more public knowledge. Let them know exactly what was being brought up, what the contract entailed, and get their input a little bit more. A lot of people, I think, would have, from going and talking with people, they would have been a little bit more accepted to it if they were at least told, this is what we're looking at, this is how much it's going to cost, and the changes that were going to be brought about. So I think that would benefit the people a little bit more.
How would you assess the services that are being provided under that new contract?
I know a lot of people aren't satisfied with the street pickup compared to alley pickup. I've heard great reviews with recycling. Everybody's going into that, and I think that's a great thing that the city has done in preparation of our landfill filling up. Other than that, I think there's some quirks that can be worked out, but getting everybody satisfied to 100% is going to be hard.
As I mentioned, let's get back to your election. You defeated an incumbent with a virtual lifetime of municipal government experience. Why do you think voters chose you?
I think that they just wanted a different face in there. Someone that wasn't in politics or working for the city that could be the voice for them instead of what some people thought kind of was biased towards city government instead of for the people as an elected official.
You mentioned, obviously, this was your first time running for public office and for campaigning. What did you learn from that experience?
Oh, man, a lot. Learning everybody has a different viewpoint on how the city should be ran. A lot of people were similar in that fact, but a lot of ideas that I have brought forth and took into voicing them for them came from all the people that I talked to. It's just a lot of different viewpoints coming from all around our district that we have right in the heart of town.
You mentioned that you spent a lot of time going door to door and talking personally with constituents. What were the topics they were most interested in talking about?
Water, streets, trash, and drainage. A lot of people were concerned about drainage. Of course, you hear about the streets, but when it comes to when we do get rain, people would notice how all of the water that would be running down the street wasn't being really collected and would be standing in the streets for long periods of time and evaporation. That kind of coincides with the street and the water project coming together on that. So those would be probably the four topics that people were more concerned about.
So as you talk with people about those things, what did you learn from them that maybe helped shape some of your opinions as to what the city should do in regards to some of those key services?
How much they want to pay for it. That is probably one of the number one items. that I would bring up to them how much it's going to be costing, what would they want to be seeing for their dollar. That was a big thing. They don't want to see their tax money go up. Tax dollars, they've seen a lot of that recently, and they want to try to get by with what they're paying now to benefit them in the long run.
And did you hear anything at all on that campaign trail that surprised you?
Not so much really surprised. A lot of it had kind of, already come about with the issues. Just the different viewpoints, I would say that would come out with everybody. It ranged from left to right side on how everybody had a different view for.
You've been serving for a little more than a month now. How has that first month on the job been?
Oh, I love it. I've been getting phone calls and emails, people reaching out for me. Of course, that's people think I'm crazy for it, but that was one of the things that I was looking forward to, just being the go-to guy and seeing how I can reach out and benefit my community.
As you have started serving on the council, are you taking a particular stance as to how you sort of blend into the body there? Or what sort of approach are you taking to your council service?
I'm taking the approach of my constituents. I'm not letting any of the council persuade me on their viewpoints. Of course, I take it in and consider how they're thinking, but mostly people reaching out to me, especially the bunch of the controversial topics that have been in the council. The last meeting, I was short-term rentals. A lot of people reached out to me, and I was able to voice their opinions for both sides to sway the vote the way that I did.
Are you surprised at how many people are sort of reaching out and contacting you because they're concerned about this issue or that?
Yes and no. I was more surprised of how many people reached out for the short-term rentals than any other topic right now. Of course, once we get more topics going onto the council, then I'm looking forward to them reaching out to me then. So,
you are taking office just as the process for reviewing and adopting a city budget for 2017 is taking flight. That budget will take effect on October 1, and it's a very tight budget year because of decreased sales tax collections. How do you anticipate combating that decrease in tax revenue?
The city government is kind of ran just like a normal business. You're going to have your ups and downs. I'd like to look at some line item issues see what we can and cannot cut. We've had some good years in the past. You hear the term oil boom and bust. We had some pretty good booms, economy coming in. Right now we're kind of in a slump. We've decreased our tax revenue, and we might not be able to do the issues and items that have been in the past couple years, 3 to 5 years. But if we can cut out the unnecessary to survive and to keep sustaining the government how we are and the employees, I think we need to be looking at the bottom line more than anything.
As we were recording this last week, the City Council held a budget workshop, and at that budget workshop, there was talk about $300,000 that has not yet been allocated in the budget process. Do you have any initial thoughts on how that money should be spent or allocated?
I want to stay open-minded right now. There's a lot of ways that money can be used going towards infrastructure of our town or city employee raises. That's something that we're going to have to look at on a little bit more in detail after we see what can be cut out of the budget for the time being until our economy kind of gets a little bit boost and the sales tax revenue is increased.
And as you know, the City Council adopted about 3 years ago 5 priorities, their top priorities, and I'd like to walk through some of those with you, beginning with the number 1 priority, which is always water. Yes. How would you grade the efforts to secure another supplementary water source?
That was a big topic through the campaign. And what I believe is people are going to be more concerned of how much it's going to cost because, of course, they don't want to see their taxes being raised. But they also need the water to where we're not in such of a drought. So I think with the partnerships that we have, and if we can pull more of the region together to look for a supplementary water source that different cities can share the cost, then I think that's going to benefit the city of San Angelo and the people more than anything. There's items like increasing the capacity of the Hickory. That would cost a tremendous amount less than the direct potable that we had been talking about as a city. 136 million is a big price tag. A lot of people were concerned about that because, of course, it would affect their household budget if their taxes are increased. So they were more concerned on what other items they can look at through the Hickory or any other freshwater or dredging, fixing our current water system now that loses about 10 to 15% through water breaks and evaporation. Mesquite trees, salt cedar on the watershed, that can also be a major thing that we should look at, because I believe those items that suck a lot of water out of our shed, we could benefit in the long run if we could keep that water for ourselves instead of the mesquite and the salt cedar sucking it up.
The first thing you mentioned was a regional cooperative effort, which is, I guess, a reference to the West Texas Water Partnership, which is an effort by the cities of San Angelo, Midland, and Abilene to develop a regional water source. You're supportive of that?
I'm very supportive of that. I think it's going to benefit us dollar-wise if we share the cost for that, and water-wise, but we all have to be on the same page.
You also mentioned about direct potable reuse, which is treating wastewater back to drinking standards. What do you think of that option?
If we had a little bit less of a debt to income ratio for a city, I think at that point we could have looked at it, but right now our debt as a city was a little bit too high for us to take on that burden of 136 initial cost, closer to 150 million in the long run for us to do that.
You know, one of the worrisome things I think is that we've gotten abundant rainfall both this year and last year, and yet our lakes are still at no more than 22% capacity in the case of Lake Ivy. Do you think people are aware that despite all this rainfall that we really haven't benefited that much in our lakes?
I think so. A lot of people have gone through the time that they have had drought after drought, and not having that water and the restrictions placed on them for watering yards and how much they can use. So I think they're aware of how much water we are currently have through the rains that we've had through the past year, and they've been conserving a little bit for it.
We're talking with Lane Carter. He is the new District 5 City Councilman, and we'll be back right after this.
Nothing to do? What are you talking about? All the things that's going on in San Angelo at the Coliseum, the Convention Center. What about Fort Concho or a little putt-putt at the Bosque? Look, take a look at this. Type this in your phone, cosatx.us/calendar, and I'm out.
Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with the District 5 Councilman on the City Council, Lane Carter, recently elected in July. We were talking about water when we broke. And how do you think the development of the community is going to impact sort of which direction we go with water?
Well, I think that we have a pretty good look at expanding our population and our business community in the near future, especially if we see items like I-27, Ports of Plains coming through San Angelo, or I-14. If we see an interstate come through San Angelo, there's some items that we're going to have to vamp up beforehand, and that's water. We're going to see population growth. We're going to see business growth through the development of the city of San Angelo. So at that time, if we see that tax base increase, we could probably, in the way that I view it, could use the Hickory, and at that point maybe use somewhat of a direct potable to where we have the fresh water and recirculate at that time, because if we have such an increase in population, we don't have the water to sustain us at that moment.
Water rates increased in January, and that was the first of a 5-year plan to implement a new rate structure. Talk about your thoughts on that plan and whether you agree or disagree with it.
Well, the first part was to right the ship.
The water utilities financial condition.
Right. They had been in the negative a couple $100,000, and their plan was to get that couple months worth of revenue that they needed, 75 to 90 days worth. That was the first part of it, to increase the water. The second was to look at our future water source, whether that be fixing our infrastructure, which I consider that as a future water source, through the loss of water that you see through water main breaks. I believe over time, if we keep fixing our water system as is and our current treatment plant, we'll see an exponential amount of water increase over time, over the 10 years that it would maybe take to fix that.
So are you talking about not only reinvesting in replacing pipelines in the ground, but also upgrading the water treatment plant, which is,
Correct.
Some parts of it are nearly 100 years old?
Correct, because we're at that point to where we're already seeing the failing system of our infrastructure. It's been going on for years and it's been neglected. So if we have been losing all of that water, one of the number one things that people talked about when I was going door to door was they hated seeing a water main break and water just running down the street, not being captured.
Well, and you mentioned that the city spends about $3 million a year, and that replaces about two miles of water mains each year. How much more aggressively would you like to see the city be in improving that infrastructure?
First, we got to see how much the financial impact is going to be, and I would try to use as much as possible, if we have any extra, to go towards that, because more lines than just 2 miles fixed, if we can get 3 or 4 per year, that's going to increase the speed of productivity and getting all of the lines fixed in a quicker amount of time. That could save us in the long run.
The city earlier this year also approved an $80 million 10-year plan to rebuild San Angelo's worst streets. What do you think of that approach?
I'm glad that they finally, I don't like how they had to come down a number crunch for it. I believe it should have been maintained a little bit more aggressively through the years. But the approach that they've got is good. It's going to get it on a cycle, which if they start now, 8 years later, they're going to be repaving that street that they did now to keep it maintained as we go. That way we don't see such a big number of $80 million put to the taxpayer.
And in fact, what you're speaking about is the $3.6 million that the city is spending this year on seal coating, which is more than we've ever done before. Seal coating, of course, being a preventative type of maintenance for streets. Are you satisfied with the amount that's being spent on street maintenance at the moment?
I'm satisfied with it. I'd like to see as much preventative maintenance as we can. That way, it won't be such a financial impact if we just let a street degrade all the way down to where we're doing the subbase and asphalt all at once, because that can be very costly. So if 3.6 is, to a lot of people that's a lot of money, but for a city that could be, it's a very low amount where we can be saving more millions in the long run by preventing the street from degrading if it's done properly.
The city's third ranking priority is a new police station. What do you think should be done about the SAPD's headquarters?
There's pros and cons. The location right now, a lot of people have been concerned of where it's going to be, but I think the pro to that is it's more centrally located. we can vamp it up to where the safety issues, especially what we've been seeing in other communities with the police force. Safety issues, a lot of people have voiced that it's between Abe and Cohenheim, high traffic area, and for a police station, they were concerned about that. But also the unique thing about that building is that building, the way that it's structured, can be used as a police station, and if any other departments needed housing in it, municipal court or our water department, they could also have a portion of that building to where we can kind of use it as a three-way instead of just a one-use facility.
Do you think a bond election should be called in order to finance the construction or renovation of a building to serve as a police station?
A bond election will always mean a tax increase, so I think that should go to the citizen. If they're willing to use their taxpayer money to go towards the police station, then I think they should have a say-so in it. But of course, you know, it's going to increase their taxes. That's going to be the hard part, because we've seen as a city that we've been hit with tax increases substantially in the past couple of years, and a lot of people are feeling that financial burden with not seeing an increase in their job status.
And of course, as you mentioned, no one wants to pay more taxes, right, but the community is very supportive of its police department. Yes. If it goes to an election, what would you expect would happen?
I would think it would pass, honestly. We've seen the citizens of cities, including San Angelo, pull together for their police force in light of everything, all the incidents that has been happening, Dallas, New Orleans, to where they're being more standing behind their police force more than anything. So I believe that they would be satisfied with it.
Another city council priority is improving development processes, and you mentioned that you own some rental properties. Yes, and much has been done on trying to make that a more efficient process. What more do you think could and should be done?
I'd like to look at restrictions and more on the permit department to bring the businesses in that we need. I'm going to take an example, and I don't like comparing San Angelo to other cities because we are so unique. But there is a company looking into going into Lubbock, Texas, and they're an IT department that can bring about 580 jobs. What we need to be looking as a city of San Angelo, not really looking at that company as Lubbock, but where is our company that is out there looking for a base? What can we do for them, and how can we bring them into the city of San Angelo to be creating jobs, to create the tax base? It's going to be out there. It's just, I think we need to pull together as development, economic development, and planning to find that company and bring them in.
You know, people may not fully appreciate how important an efficient development process is when it comes to developing a piece of property. Explain why that is so vital.
Tax base. It will share the burden for the taxes for the community and the citizens. If we bring in that base, then you're going to be able to see an economy thrive in San Angelo. My view that I can see in San Angelo is not such you'll never have to be burdened by oil boom or bust. That can be a supplementary income for the city of San Angelo whenever it is thriving. But if we can look at creating our economy to where we don't see such a budget crunch and crisis as we do now, if the oil market slumps, I think we need to focus on that type of market.
The fifth council priority is employee pay raises, and we talked earlier about what a tough budget year it is this year, and we are anticipating the same in the coming year. How does the need to provide competitive pay balance against the burden on the taxpayer?
It's half one way, six one way, half dozen another. Employee raises will always have to come out of the budget and the tax base. But right now, with being such a hurting economy that we have and lower sales tax that we have been seeing in the past year, it's going to be hard to see the raises that we would like to be given to our city employees. We want them to know that they are valued, city employees, police, fire, anything like that. But right now we can see as much as we can to give them an increase.
And you mentioned police, and of course it was just a couple of years ago that the city negotiated with the police a meet and confer contract that provides for a certain amount of raises each year. So what would you say to a police officer who's expecting a raise that there may not be any coming this year?
I want to let them know that they are valued, and we're going to try our wholehearted effort to give them that raise. We got to work with the money that we have, though. With the meet and confer, they're expecting a raise. But with, like you said, the 322 that hasn't been differentiated into where it's going to be going, we might not be able to give such a big raise as they're expecting. But if we can later on in the year, then maybe that's something that we can look at.
At the very beginning of this interview, you mentioned that you recently became a new father.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. How's the challenge been of sort of balancing that responsibility against this other new responsibility that you have serving up here as a councilman?
He is a very good baby. Very good. We've been blessed. It was not such a challenge as I thought it was going to be. We're actually, knock on wood, getting some sleep at night. He's going in between about 4 to 5 hours of feedings now. He does like to eat, though. But it's not as challenging as I really expected it to be. We've been blessed. So.
Before each city council meeting, and we're going to have one here tomorrow, you receive a thick packet of information. Explain to people sort of what's involved with just preparing for one of these meetings.
It has every line item agenda on there, along with the ordinances or the proposals, along with the staff recommendations. So there's a lot of reading, a lot of memos to go through, and to weigh in your options of how you're going to decide on the factor.
One last question. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I have my city phone and have my email. They can call me, they can text me, they can email me. If I'm in a surgery case, if I don't answer, they can text right away, and I can be able to get back with them, or leave a voicemail and I can get back to them later in the day. But my phone number is 213-1987. My email is lane.carter@cosatx.us. I'm happy to be there for them. That's one thing that I ran for, and what I've been looking for the majority.
We've been talking with Lane Carter. He is the new District 5 councilman, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.